Demon Burial tried to stop Li Ping that day, but it was already too late. He left her behind in the rain. Years passed -15, then 50, then 200, but she never stopped waiting for her master. After 500 years of pain and resentment, her heart grew cold, and she became evil. One day, a group of people entered the forest where she lived. Among them was Elder Axe from the Sword Saint Guild, along with members of the Dark Guild. Elder Axe betrayed the Sword Saint Guild by selling secret information in exchange for a way to increase his strength. A member of the Dark Guild gave him a bottle of black liquid, claiming it was a new potion that could make him stronger. Although Elder Axe had doubts, he drank the liquid without wasting any time. As soon as he drank it, his body began to change, and a dark gear appeared on his chest. The power surged through him, making him feel stronger. But suddenly, a black aura emerged from the axe which Li Ping left behind. Before anyone could react, the aura killed all the Dark Guild members on the spot. Elder Axe was terrified. He realized that there was no magic power he could sense, yet the axe had instantly killed the Great Apostle and 2 others. He wondered if the power belonged to the old president of the Sword Saint Guild. As he moved closer to the axe, he realized that it wasn't the Sword Saint's power. The strange power was coming from the axe itself. Suddenly, a voice from the axe ordered him to kneel. He knelt in fear, confused and unsure of what was happening. A figure appeared from the axe, introducing herself as Demon Burial. She told him that she was now known as Demon Burial. She then asked him if he wanted more power, offering to give it to him. Back to the present, Demon Burial reached Li Ping's house, possessing the body of Holy Sword Alpha behind her. She was filled with anger and frustration. She wondered why, after 500 years of carrying resentment, her first thoughts upon returning were about the past. She couldn't understand why she felt nostalgic instead of focused on revenge. Just then, she heard the door creak open. To her surprise, it was Li Ping. She quickly transformed into Holy Sword Alpha out of surprise. Li Ping told Elizabeth that he was going to chop the firewood for cooking, and that she could talk to Sword Saint in the meantime. He seemed happy to see Alpha again. Demon Burial, still disguised as Alpha, thought he had recognized her. However, as Li Ping spoke, he mentioned that he had been worried about Alpha's sudden disappearance. He said he had struggled to chop firewood properly without the sword. Hearing this, Demon Burial's anger flared. She realized that Alpha's resentment matched her own because he had abandoned her and chosen that broken sword instead. Li Ping grabbed the sword and warned that if Alpha ignored him, he would simply start chopping firewood. However, Burial remained silent. As Li Ping prepared the wood, Demon Burial began to feel something familiar while trembling. Li Ping suddenly looked at Alpha and asked why holding the sword gave him the same long-lost feelings from the past. Demon Burial thought to herself that he must be pretending, and she wanted to see what he was planning. As Li Ping continued to chop firewood, she couldn't stop herself from remembering the joy of doing this simple task with her master. Even after 500 years, those feelings hadn't disappeared. Suddenly, Li Ping heard strange noises and wondered if Alpha had made them. He dismissed the thought and said that he felt like he and the sword were a perfect match right now. He suggested they do something big together, completely unaware of the presence of Demon Burial. As Li Ping chopped firewood, Demon Burial's entire body filled with a comforting sensation. She enjoyed nothing more than helping her master with this task. With each block of wood that Li Ping split, her sense of fulfillment grew stronger. She wanted to be useful to him in any way he needed. After cutting through many blocks, Li Ping realized that none of the axes he had made in the past felt as good for chopping wood as the one he was using now. The experience reminded him of the times he used the axe called Da Zhuan, which brought back a feeling of deep satisfaction. Hearing his thoughts, Demon Burial suddenly realized that Li Ping had never forgotten her. This understanding eased her heart, and the anger she had carried for centuries began to fade away. As Li Ping continued chopping, he reflected on how much the world had changed. The barriers that once kept them apart had disappeared, and the world outside was completely different now. He thought about returning to retrieve his old companion Da Zhuan, but he decided that this would be the last time he used Alpha to chop wood. Demon Burial, hearing this, couldn't hold back her emotions. Tears filled her eyes as she accepted the truth that this would indeed be the last time she shared this moment with her master. Her body was gone, and there was no way she could physically help him again. The only thing that had kept her spirit alive for 500 years was the anger and resentment she had felt. However, after seeing Li Ping again, the hatred completely vanished. With her resentment gone, she knew her time had come to an end. She felt honored to have been created by him and grateful for the time they had spent together. She wished that the next axe Le Ping made would serve him even better. With those final thoughts, Demon Burial's spirit disappeared completely. After she vanished, Le Ping turned to Alpha, who was still in sword form. He assured the sword that there was no need to be sad, promising that he would make a new axe when the time was right. For now, Alpha's role as a holy sword was more important. Le Ping intended to take Alpha on adventures with him from that day forward. Once he finished his task, Le Ping went inside the house to cook. As soon as he left, Alpha transformed into his human form. However, his expression was weary and solemn. He reflected on how things had been resolved between Le Ping and Demon Burial, but he couldn't help wondering what would happen to him now. Meanwhile, inside the living room, Elizabeth asked the Sword Saint how he knew the Demon Queen's sword technique. The Sword Saint began explaining that it had all started over 100 years ago when the Dark Guild began to rise. The guild had been capturing people from various races across the continent to perform experiments on them. In response, those with power focused only on protecting themselves, and no one dared to confront the Dark Guild directly. The Sword Saint, having just founded the Sword Saint Guild at the time, decided to go to the demon realm alone to gather information about the Dark Guild. Unfortunately, her presence was discovered, and the Dark Guild sent a large number of apostles to hunt her down. At that point, the Sword Saint had only recently reached the rank of a demon sect-level fighter. She found himself in a desperate situation, fighting off the apostles while trying to escape. During her escape, she was injured and fell into a deep abyss. The place where she landed turned out to be the Demon Queen's old training ground, which was surrounded by magma. Severely wounded, she noticed remnants of the Demon Queen's sword technique etched into the stones around her. Although the technique was incomplete, she was able to mimic the movements. As she practiced, her understanding of swordsmanship suddenly deepened, and she absorbed energy from the surrounding environment. She remained in the training ground for 3 months, practicing until every trace of the sword technique had vanished. Despite the progress she made, the Sword Saint believed it was unfortunate that her own talent was limited. She had only been able to master a few of the sword moves, and she hadn't fully grasped the depth of the Demon Queen's technique. Still, the experience was life-changing. In just 3 months, she rose to the rank of a 3-star Demon King, which was a significant achievement. However, her newfound strength also brought a sense of unease. She realized how vast and complex the world of swordsmanship truly was. The glimpse of the Demon Queen's technique showed her that there were heights she might never reach. She wondered if she had already reached the limit of her potential. While she was lost in these thoughts, she heard a voice offering to help him become stronger. The voice asked if he was willing to accept its power. At this point, Le Ping interrupted the story, curious about what had happened next. The Sword Saint explained that eager to continue growing stronger and fight the Dark Guild, she had agreed to let the voice's power reside in her body. The voice, however, revealed that its full body was still sealed, so it could only grant her a limited amount of chaotic power. Instead, it gave her a tentacle to use as a weapon. The Sword Saint realized that Le Ping was the legendary hero who had once lived a secluded life with the Demon Queen. This revelation made her wonder if he would now question her about the power she had accepted from the Sea of Darkness. Elizabeth then informed the Sword Saint that the main body of the creature that had spoken to her was still sealed. What she had encountered must have been one of its clone consciousnesses. Le Ping, intrigued by the mention of the tentacle weapon, asked if it looked like an octopus. He admitted that he had never tasted seafood from this world and was curious about what it might be like. Elizabeth, confused by the sudden shift in conversation, asked if seafood was tasty. Le Ping explained that he had enjoyed seafood in his previous world, but had no idea what kind of creatures lived in the seas of this world. The Sword Saint, baffled by the change in topic, wondered why they were suddenly discussing food when the threat of the Sea of Darkness was still looming over them. Le Ping, however, appeared unfazed. He suggested they eat first, then talk. He removed the lid from a pot he had prepared, and a bright light filled the room. The Sword Saint was stunned by the sheer amount of magical energy radiating from the dish. Le Ping had made a dish called Curry Inferno using top-quality ingredients. Elizabeth's face lit up with excitement when she saw it because it was her favorite meal. Elizabeth enjoyed the curry even though it was very hot. She was disappointed that the heat overwhelmed her. Frustrated, she thought to herself that someone of her strength, at the 7-star demon god level, should have been able to handle the heat. Seeing her struggle, Le Ping asked if she was alright and explained that this year's peppers were hotter than usual. He then suggested adding some of the newly harvested ice crystal onions to reduce the heat. Elizabeth exclaimed she was completely fine. Ping quickly chopped the onions into tiny pieces, moving so fast that even the sword saint, a skilled warrior, was surprised. She thought that he must have used a special sword technique and even realized something about the knife. Ping added the chopped onions to the curry, which reduced the level of heat. He then asked Elizabeth to taste it again. Elizabeth frowned at the suggestion. She felt like he was mocking her, thinking she couldn't handle spicy food. She firmly told Ping that he didn't need to worry, as she wanted to eat the spicy dish. Afterward, Ping offered some food to Sword Saint, who was surprised and asked if it was really okay to share the curry. Just as Ping was about to hand over the food, Elizabeth stopped him and told Sword Saint that she needed to choose carefully before eating because there were 3 options available. Sword Saint was confused and asked Elizabeth to explain what she meant. Ping, curious as well, asked about the 3 choices. Elizabeth used her demonic magic to present 3 items: a bowl of curry, a swordsmanship technique book, and a kitchen knife. Ping asked her what she planned to do with these items. Elizabeth explained that since Sword Saint was here to deal with the Dark Guild, she would offer one of the 3 choices: a whole pot of curry, Ping's knife, or a swordsmanship manual. Ping was shocked by this and interrupted, saying that giving the curry or swordsmanship technique was fine, but he hadn't agreed to give away his kitchen knife. Elizabeth silenced him, saying that this was her test for Sword Saint. She mentioned that testing mortals wasn't something exclusive to heroes, and she wanted to play this game herself. Confused, Ping agreed, acknowledging that Elizabeth was the demon queen and had the final say. Sword Saint carefully considered the choices in front of her. She realized that the pot of curry emitted a massive amount of magical energy. Just thinking about it made her believe that eating it could allow her to advance to the Demon King level or even beyond. However, the fact that Elizabeth had tasted it herself implied that even someone as powerful as the Demon Queen struggled to handle it. If a legendary hero had purified the curry, it might still be too much for an ordinary person like her to handle. Next, she examined the kitchen knife. All of her S-class weapons seemed insignificant compared to it. The demonstration from Ping had made it clear that he didn't want to part with the knife, possibly because he knew she wouldn't be able to handle its power. Sword Saint realized that choosing either the curry or the kitchen knife would be too dangerous. That left only the swordsmanship manual. Sword Saint decided to choose the sword book. Just as she was about to make her decision, someone suddenly broke down the door of Ping's house. Everyone turned toward the noise in surprise. Ping immediately recognized the intruder as Holy Sword Alpha and asked what he was doing there. Holy Sword Alpha was furious and yelled that he was filled with resentment and intended to kill everyone present. Sword Saint, however, noticed something familiar about the energy radiating from Holy Sword Alpha. She realized that it was the presence of the demon Burial. She understood that she must have learned she was still alive and had tracked her down. Determined not to trouble Ping or Elizabeth further, she asked Ping to lend her the kitchen knife. She planned to deal with demon Burial on her own. As soon as Sword Saint held Ping's kitchen knife, she felt a powerful, oppressive magic emanating from it. The knife contained a hidden realm within it, far beyond her understanding. However, the knife was too powerful for her to control. It immediately began to drain all of her magic power, turning her into a twig. As her energy was completely drained, she lost consciousness. The knife slipped from her hand and began moving toward Holy Sword Alpha on its own. Holy Sword Alpha was terrified when he saw the knife coming for him. With very little effort, the kitchen knife cut Holy Sword Alpha in half. After completing its task, the knife returned to Ping. Everyone in the room was horrified by what they had just witnessed. Ping, in particular, stood frozen in shock, wondering what had just happened. At the Dark Guild, a bearman lay badly injured on the ground. He was Feredzadag Samui, a 1-star demon lord and the former president of the Giant Bear Guild. Another member of the Dark Guild, Test Subject Number 24, who was also a 1-star demon lord, used his Thunderbolt technique as CPR to wake him. After being struck, the injured bearman woke up in a rage, shouting that he was still able to fight the Golden Dragon King. Before he could do anything, another guild member used the soft air kiss technique to calm him down. She was Ruth Bader, an elder of the Dark Guild and a 2-star demon sect practitioner at level 24. She reminded Ferris that the battle had already ended. Test Subject Number 24 complained how the vice president was eaten. William was beaten and vanished without a trace, and Ruth ran away. Ruth admitted that there was nothing she could do against the Golden Dragon King, who was at the powerful Demon King level. She thought about her own limits, recognizing that her 2-star demon sect rank gave her no right to interfere in a fight of that scale. In her mind, the outcome of the battle had already been decided, especially with the Dark Guild's president present. Meanwhile, Emilia had been seriously injured during a tough fight with Malfoy. To save her life, she used her unique skill and transformed into an egg. Malfoy observed her transformation with surprise, recognizing it as a life-saving ability that made her immune to attacks or magic. Despite his initial aggression, he claimed he never intended to harm her. Using the dark liquid on his body, Malfoy grabbed Emilia's egg and placed it into a pot behind him. He positioned her egg next to a clone of Elizabeth. Suddenly, a bright light burst from the cloning pot, and Malfoy's body began to merge with it. As he fully merged, he achieved a breakthrough to the Demon King level. After reaching this new level, he noticed that his body felt stronger and healthier. He realized that with the right materials, more of his masters could be resurrected quickly. A bug arrived at the Dark Guild and surveyed the mess. He wondered how things had fallen into such chaos. As he approached Malfoy, he transformed into his human form and demanded an explanation. Azathoth asked why his connection with Da Gao had disappeared. Malfoy told him that Da Gao had sacrificed himself to protect the guild. He noticed that Malfoy looked younger and asked if he had made a new breakthrough. Malfoy confirmed that he had gathered the right materials for his experiments. Azathoth then explained that his current body had been exposed and was no longer usable. He had come to request a new one but hadn't expected to find the guild in such disorder. While Azathoth spoke, he started to suspect that Malfoy had intentionally used an enemy's attack to eliminate Da Gao and remove any surveillance. His thoughts became clouded with doubt about Malfoy's true intentions. Ruth Bader, noticing Azathoth, asked Number 24 who he was. Number 24 explained that Tagore was from the Sea of Darkness, just like Da Gao, and that he was also the president of an outside guild. After Azathoth became the Pillar Demon, the Dark Guild came under his control. Number 24 continued to reveal that, like Da Gao, Azathoth was one of the many consciousness clones from the Sea of Darkness. He explained that the Sea of Darkness was not part of their world but a different universe altogether. The beings from that universe did not have fixed forms, so they had to possess other bodies to survive in this world. Hearing this, Ruth Bader felt confused. She had always thought the Sea of Darkness was located somewhere on the hero's continent. Even though she didn't fully understand, she asked Number 24 why the guild's president wanted to cooperate with someone like Azathoth and what the true purpose of their alliance was. Number 24 told her that the dark gears used by the guild members had been created by President himself after studying the power of chaos. However, even Number 24 admitted that he did not know the president's true purpose. Azathoth turned back to Malfoy and informed him that there were many unstable factors outside the guild. He mentioned the sudden rise of the Card Guild and explained that their plans to take over the Dwarf Kingdom and the Aristotle Kingdom had to be postponed. Upon hearing this, Malfoy realized that they couldn't act right away. He acknowledged that the apostles he had trained were already gone. After considering the situation, he agreed to put their current plans on hold for the time being. Many years ago, Malfoy completed his research on creating an Elizabeth clone. He started a trial and pressed the button, hoping to see Elizabeth again. Number 24 congratulated him, saying that the Master's return was finally happening. The clone creation process began, but an error occurred, causing damage to the clone. Malfoy was frustrated and wondered what was missing to create a stable magic supply. Suddenly, he coughed up blood, and his body reached its limit. If he didn't reach the peak of the Demon Lord level, he would die soon from old age. He was disappointed, thinking about how he had spent his whole life working on Elizabeth's resurrection. But he was now facing the reality of his short lifespan. Number 24, feeling guilty, blamed itself for not being able to use its unlimited electricity magic to supply energy for the Master. Just then, a figure approached Malfoy and asked if he wanted to become stronger, offering his help. Malfoy angrily demanded to know who he was. A bug-like creature appeared from black smoke and introduced itself as Azathoth from the Sea of Darkness. It offered Malfoy chaos power in exchange for a partnership. Malfoy used the chaos power to experiment on mice. The mice transformed into monsters, and dark energy appeared. Malfoy was thrilled by the results, realizing that by integrating chaos power into living creatures, he could create a magic medium for their world. If he mass-produced these dark creatures, he could solve the magic supply problem. Azathoth agreed, saying they were a good match. Azathoth's unlimited chaos power could be continuously provided to Malfoy, who would then provide Azathoth with many bodies. Over time, Malfoy experimented with different races, aiming to create a chain of magic power supply to revive his master. Azathoth, seeing the progress, asked Malfoy why he still refused to accept the full power of chaos after so many experiments. Malfoy replied that he wasn't interested in gaining strength or ruling the world. He just wanted to resurrect his master. He stated that the deal was simple. Azathoth would provide the chaos power, and Malfoy would cultivate the medium for using the chaos power in their world. He didn't care what Azathoth wanted to use the power for and wouldn't explain his next research. Azathoth, not pleased with Malfoy's answer, calmed down and agreed. He said he would step out for a while, keeping his distance from Malfoy, as he didn't trust him fully. Azathoth thought he needed someone to balance Malfoy and summoned his clone, Cthulhu. He told Malfoy that from now on, Cthulhu would manage the Dark Guild with him instead of Azathoth. Malfoy didn't care much, agreeing to let Cthulhu handle it and promising to arrange training for the apostles. Azathoth left, heading into the outside world. Back in the present, Azathoth asked Malfoy how long it would take to regrow a Demon Lord-level body. Malfoy replied that it was difficult since the place had been destroyed and all the experimental subjects were gone. He also pointed out that Azathoth had already attracted many powerful people, including the Lord Sword Saint of the Sword Saint Guild. Azathoth, frustrated, told Malfoy to stop pretending, saying that Malfoy could reach Demon King level in minutes. He then asked why Malfoy didn't just use the Elizabeth clone in the incubation bin. Malfoy became furious and warned Azathoth that if he ever offended his master again, he would kill him immediately. Malfoy released a powerful killing intent that was so intense that the one-star Demon Lord couldn't even stand. Ruth Bader collapsed into her knees, feeling that this might be the true strength of the president. Azathoth told Malfoy that it was just a joke and that he would simply find another body to parasitize. After hearing this, Azathoth realized that Malfoy was a ticking time bomb, likely to spiral out of control. Therefore, he decided not to share Elizabeth's information with him for now, keeping it as a bargaining chip for future negotiations. Azathoth also knew that the resurrection of the main body needed to be accelerated. He informed Malfoy that their cooperation would continue, and he would come back with any news. Once Azathoth left, Malfoy hugged the cloning pot, speaking with affection. He said that the master would soon return to a more perfect state. Meanwhile, Bon Laping decided to explore outside on his own. Elizabeth had opened the portal for him, allowing him to go alone. He saw this as an opportunity to explore carefully, but was surprised to find Boss Town being rebuilt. It had only been a month since his last visit, and he wondered why the entire town was under reconstruction. Laping arrived at the church where Annie was. He thought it was time to check on Annie's psychological counseling and wondered how she was doing. When he entered the church and opened the door, he saw a pig demon acting suspiciously on the floor. Laping, shocked, asked the pig demon what he was doing and angrily smashed the door, demanding he stop. Upon seeing Laping, the pig demon recognized him immediately and stood up angry. Laping confronted him and asked what was wrong with Annie. The pig demon reassured Laping that there was no need to worry, as Annie was resting comfortably. The pig demon grabbed Laping by the shoulder and asked if he had just said that he was messing around. The pig demon suggested that they work together because he was tired. Laping, although scared, remained determined to become a hero. He called out to Annie, saying she didn't have to be afraid because he was there to save her. Annie appeared visibly surprised to see Laping. She asked why he was there. Upon seeing Annie, the pig demon called her big sister, pushed Laping aside, and ran toward her. He grabbed Annie's hand and suggested she rest in her room for a while. He added that he had personally cleaned the stubborn stains on the floor that she had mentioned before. Annie, happy to hear this, said that the church looked brand new and thanked everyone for their hard work. Laping, relieved, sighed and realized they were just cleaning. He thought they were doing something else. Annie asked him what he was thinking. As Laping looked at her, he realized she seemed taller. Annie replied that since she had taken back all her magic power, her magic level had increased, and she had also grown taller. Laping, surprised, thought the people from the Beast Gang were causing trouble and collecting protection fees from Annie. Annie explained that everything changed last week. Something happened to the Beast Gang that caused serious damage to Boss Town. Laping asked if the Dark Guild was behind it, and Annie confirmed it. She explained that 10 days ago, the leader of the Beast Gang gained dark power, lost control, and became an apostle of the Dark Guild. He destroyed Boss Town, and people fled for their lives. Demon Pig, the gang leader's little brother, tried to wake him up, calling him his dear brother. During that time, Azathoth observed everything from the sidelines. He noted that it was easier for orcs to gain strength at the level of demon pillars compared to humans and elves. However, it was difficult for them to maintain rationality, and they were reduced to mere killing machines, unsuitable as parasitic bodies. The mutated pig attacked the pig demon, intending to kill him. However, little girl Annie used her unique puppet magic to save his life. The mutated pig became even angrier and started destroying everything. Annie told everyone to calm down, assuring them that she would protect Boss Town. She summoned her puppet team and commanded them to attack the mutated pig. After a tough fight, they managed to subdue the mutated pig. They then removed the dark gear from the mutated pig's body, one by one. As the last piece was removed, the mutated pig instantly died. Upon seeing this horrible scene, the demon pig started crying. Annie asked for his forgiveness, explaining that she couldn't purify the strange magic power in his body. Azathoth, seeing Annie's power, wondered who she was. He thought there was such a strong person in Boss Town and wondered if she had just used the red demon eyes. He also wondered why the people of Jimji's bloodline hadn't died long ago. He sent a clone to investigate, thinking she might be a good target. However, Annie sensed his presence, looked back, and stared at the Azathoth clone with her red demon eye. The parasite instantly died. She wondered who had been there just now. After hearing everything, Leping realized that the dark gear pieces proved the Dark Guild was behind all this. Annie agreed with him, but added that before the mysterious man disappeared, she had sensed the same magic as her eyes. She thought catching him might provide a clue to her past memories. Leping told Annie to relax, assuring her that memories would return slowly. Annie thanked Leping for his encouragement and asked if he had come to see her for something specific. Leping awkwardly explained that his main purpose was to check on her recovery. He told her that if she was still struggling with any psychological issues, she could talk to him anytime. Annie explained that after her enlightenment, she had completely moved on from the past, just as her sister Elizabeth had said. She wanted to use the power of Jimji's bloodline to contribute to world peace. Leping was happy to hear this and said it was great. He knew leaving it to her was the right choice. Annie reassured him that he didn't have to worry and could leave it to her. However, Leping looked a little sad as he said he was ashamed to admit that since Elizabeth no longer cared about the outside world, he should be the one to set the world right. But as someone who didn't know magic, he couldn't do much. He worried that if he, the so-called legendary hero, had to act, things might turn into a mess. Upon hearing this, Annie's hand began to shake. She asked Leping what he meant, imagining he wanted to tell her that the world was too weak and that mortals couldn't even deal with the Dark Guild. She thought that if she was asked to act, she would have to completely reconstruct the world. Annie became scared, thinking that if things went wrong, everyone would die. Leping told Annie that Elizabeth had praised her talent, her abilities, and her kind heart. He believed that the peace of the hero's continent should be entrusted to people like her. Annie told Leping that she would try her best. However, she wondered if, when he said she had the ability, he meant the power he gave her was enough to destroy the Dark Guild. She admitted she was still far from controlling that power. Annie apologized, saying she would do better next time. Leping handed Annie a bag of magical fruits, saying that as promised, he would bring her fruits during the harvest and send them regularly in the future. He told her to work hard here. When Annie saw the magical fruits, she was surprised, thinking that Leping knew she was far from able to use her power and had brought precious fruits to help her. Moreover, he had said he would send them regularly, meaning he would keep track of whether she misused the abilities he gave her. She thanked him, saying she would never betray his trust and would protect Boss Town. Seeing Annie happy, Leping thought that now he could leave things to her. Leping said he was fulfilling the agreement he made with Elizabeth to rule the world, even though it was an agreement she had made. When Annie heard rule the world, she asked Leping if it meant the legendary hero still had to act himself. Leping explained that it wasn't what she thought. In fact, his goal was to pursue peace, and in Elizabeth's view, ruling the world was enough. However, Leping wanted to do it his way. When asked what that meant, he smiled and said he had come to ask for Annie's advice. Annie was surprised and asked why he wanted her advice. Leping replied that since she had read many books, she must know a lot about the hero's continent. He wondered if she could tell him about the major powers there. Annie agreed to share what she knew, saying she didn't know much about the Dark Guild and the Demon Realm, but there were mainly three major powers: the Sword Saint Guild, the Elf Tribe, and the Kingdom of Aristotle. The Dwarf Kingdom had a supporting role, but it had the closest relationship with the Sword Saint Guild, which also protected the Dwarf Kingdom. The Sword Saint Guild was the leader of all guilds, and anyone wanting to start a guild had to get their approval. Before the Dark Guild appeared, there were constant disputes between the races. After the Dark Guild showed up, the different powers focused on defense, putting them temporarily on the same side. Among the major powers, Saga, the president of the Sword Saint Guild, was the most powerful. She set up the Sword Saint Guild near the Poison Swamp area to intimidate the Dark Guild. The Kingdom of Aristotle was a super kingdom known for its combination of technology and magic, but it had closed itself off 10 years ago, and no one knew its current situation. While the elf tribe was also isolated, it still allowed its people to interact with the outside world. However, it was hard for outsiders to enter the elf tribe. The Sword Saint Guild was a newcomer but quickly became the strongest, and many towns joined it for protection. This caused resentment from the Kingdom of Aristotle and the elf tribe. Though everyone remained peaceful because of the power of the Sword Saint Guild, the other two groups secretly hoped the Dark Guild would act to help limit the Sword Saint Guild. Annie continued, explaining that Bo's town remained neutral because it was far from the three powers, so none of them sent help. Leping understood that aside from the Sword Saint Guild, each group was just trying to deal with their own troubles, which allowed the Dark Guild to take advantage. Annie then asked how Leping planned to achieve peace in the current situation. He explained that true peace couldn't be achieved by simply eliminating the Dark Guild. If the conflicts between the three major powers weren't resolved, another disaster could happen even if the Dark Guild was gone. Elizabeth could use her strength to suppress everyone, but Leping wanted to unite the different forces to form a true alliance while fighting the Dark Guild. Leping had given up on magic and tried swordsmanship for over a month, but the sword master refused to accept him. When he asked Elizabeth for help with swordsmanship, she told him not to bother, saying he was just looking for trouble. He realized he had no talent for swordsmanship, so using force wasn't an option. After thinking about it, he came up with a different approach. Leping believed that the crisis with the Dark Guild could become an opportunity to bring lasting stability and peace to the continent, but the biggest challenge was convincing the major powers to join together. He decided to experience it firsthand, as this was the only way he could think of to be different from Elizabeth. Annie agreed with Leping, seeing his approach as different from Elizabeth's. She thought that maybe the conflict between the hero and the Demon Queen was just a bet to see whose method was best. 500 years ago, Elizabeth achieved peace by ruling the world, but when she wasn't around, strife returned and chaos followed. Leping, however, believed in the idea of teaching a man to fish, so he wanted mortals to take the initiative to achieve peace. This was ideal but unprecedented, so he decided to visit the hero's continent to see who was worthy of his help, just like when he visited the Golden Dragon's treasure dungeon. As for Annie, Leping's goal in training her was to make her a new force in Boss Town and a pawn in his grand plan. However, gaining strength could make people forget their original purpose, and if she no longer followed Leping's core values, she might be eliminated. Annie wondered if she should be thinking about her life and death. She felt honored to be part of Leping's grand plan and contribute to the world. She thought that convincing the major powers to unite and end the strife would be harder than defeating the Dark Guild. If anyone else had said it, people might have laughed, but if Leping said it, it was different. She believed Leping could do it, so she decided to improve herself and use the angel Raphael, which Leping had gifted her, as soon as possible. Leping excitedly asked Annie what she was thinking about, making her so focused, and asked her to tell him more about the hero's continent. He also asked what kind of place the Kingdom of Aristotle was, known for its technology and magic. Annie replied that she didn't know it well but had read that they could control steel giants as big as castles with just a small amount of magic. Leping was excited to hear this and wondered if he should visit the Kingdom of Aristotle first. However, Annie suggested it might be better to visit the elf tribe first. The Kingdom of Aristotle was still closed, and recently, news spread about a new guild recognized by the Sword Saint Guild that had gone to the elf tribe. Meanwhile, we see a magical carriage pulled by 3 horses while midair. They soon turned into cards. Mr. Bose and Elif had arrived in the elf tribe. Bose told Elif that to enter the elf tribe, she had to first pass through the trial field called Plant Purgatory. He asked her if she was confident, to which she replied, yes, without hesitation. She then used her card-slash technique and cleared all the plants in Plant Purgatory easily. After seeing this, Bose warned her that this was only the outermost area and that the deeper they went, the more dangerous the plants would become. As Bose explained this, little did they know, someone was tailing them behind. Elif asked why. Before they left, the Sword Saint Guild had already greeted them. but now they had placed so many guard plants to make things difficult for them. Bose replied that foreigners had to prove their strength to enter the elf tribe, and they were testing the strength of their card guild. While he was explaining, the ground began cracking, and suddenly a large plant monster appeared in front of them. Bose told Elif that the monster was called the 5 Elements P and that it was the last stage. Elif then asked why he knew that. The plant monster began attacking by shooting pea grains. Bose told Elif to use combo skills, and both of them used the cross-split technique to kill the plant monster. After seeing this, Elif remarked that the guard plants in the last level didn't seem very strong. Bose warned her not to take it lightly, explaining that this was the 5 Elements P. His worry came true as the plant monster regenerated itself and grew more mouths to attack. As the plant monster prepared to attack, Bose told Elif to build a shield immediately and get behind him. The plant monster grew more mouths and attacked in all directions. Not only that, but the pea grains it shot exploded and sharp objects started flying everywhere. Bose and Elif built a barrier around them to block the plant monster's attacks. Some of the plant monster's attacks bounced back after hitting their shields, but Bose absorbed them and launched them back at the monster. Seeing this, Elif realized that she had underestimated the enemy. She tried to touch her wound, but Bose warned her not to touch it, as there might be venom in it. He offered to take care of it and use the heart card's healing skill to heal her. Surprised, Elif said that a healing combination had been developed and that her father's card skills had improved. Bose then told her to find a safe place to rest and leave the rest to him. However, Elif disagreed, saying that she could still fight. Seeing her determination, Bose cautioned her to be careful as the plant was getting more serious. Suddenly, the plant monster grew another 4 mouths. Poison, flame, ice, flora, and water elements appeared. This was the true form of the 5 Elements P. Elif realized that her father had been right when he said it was as powerful as someone at the Demon Lord level. With the mix of 5 attributes, it could release different kinds of magic that could restrain anyone it faced, which made it so dangerous. Bose remembered how he had seen Lord Sword Saint defeat it instantly 30 years ago, but now the monster seemed stronger. Bose understood that the longer the battle lasted, the more the monster would target Elif. Elif asked if he planned to use the strongest 10 cards he had. He said no, explaining that to fight opponents with attribute magic, it would be better to use 3 cards to summon the Holy Little Mage. Just as Bose was about to summon the Holy Little Mage, they were suddenly attacked by an arrow. They were both surprised to see that the arrow started to grow and turn into a beautiful flower. The plant monster, upon seeing the flower, got scared and retreated into the ground. Elif told her father that she felt a familiar magic coming from the arrow. Bose explained that it was because she had elf blood in her. Then, an elf spirit appeared from the arrow and invited them to follow her. The spirit delivered her message and disappeared. The flower from the arrow died after that. Bose realized that, as he had expected, they had been watched during the battle and had earned their recognition. Elif asked why her mom hadn't come to pick them up if she was here. Bose explained that the elves had strict hierarchies and complex relationships. To protect them, Elif's mom had chosen to return to the Holy Land, and it had been 16 years. He reassured her that her mom's love for her would never change, but the truth would need to be discovered for themselves. As they entered the elf tribe, the elves were not happy to see them. One elf mocked, saying they were from the human race and there was a hybrid among them. Another elf added that they were there on behalf of the Sword Saint Guild, and they would likely ask the elves for something again. One elf complained about the bad smell, while another agreed it was annoying. Elif asked Bose why the elves were so hostile. He explained that most of them had never left the elf tribe and were wary of outsiders. He reassured her not to worry too much. However, Elif pointed out that many elves in high-level guilds lived outside the tribe. If the elf tribe was so great, why did they leave? Bose explained that there was also a despicable chain of bloodlines within the elf tribe. The tribe was spread around a large sacred tree, and the closer to the center, the higher the elf's bloodline and the more resources they had. Those who left the tribe were usually from peripheral bloodlines, but they had special abilities. Since elves specialized in rare plant magic and archery, they could only stay in the peripheral parts of the tribe, but when they left, they became the talents that guilds sought to recruit. Bose said there were exceptions to this, but before he could explain further, a beautiful elf woman appeared, riding a deer. She introduced herself as Blanchette, the great general of the tribe, and ordered Bose and Elif to follow her to the Holy Land. Elif was amazed and exclaimed that she looked so cool and mighty. Bose warned her to be careful with her words as they got further inside the tribe. The two then used cards to fly and follow Blanchette, expecting they would see Elif's mother in the Holy Land. As they followed Blanchette, Elif noticed the trees parting for them. Bose explained that this was the guard barrier. Without a high-level elf to guide the way, intruders would get lost in the forest labyrinth. When they finally came out, they were greeted by the World Tree, surrounded by a beautiful light of nature. Both Bose and Elif were amazed by the sight. Bose told Elif that this was where everything began 30 years ago when he was 19 and a member of the Sword Saint Guild. Back then, a young Bose had visited the elf tribe with the guild's master. While he was peacefully eating chips, he suddenly heard an elf girl shouting, telling everyone to get out of the way because she couldn't control her deer. Bose threw his sword in front of the deer to slow it down. As the deer began to slow, Bose jumped onto it and calmed it down. The elf girl thanked him for his help, but Bose was surprised to see that the deer was a holy beast mount, something only high-level elves had. He asked the elf girl if she could lend it to him for a ride. Afterward, Bose took control of the holy beast and began riding it. The elf girl was amazed, saying that she hadn't even learned to ride on flat ground, let alone in the air. Bose was thrilled and commented on how incredible the inner circle of the elf tribe was. The elf girl, however, was scared and covered her face, asking Bose to take her back to the ground. Bose was surprised and asked why a high-level elf like her would be so scared. She apologized and explained that her father and sisters had said the same thing, but she was simply too scared to learn. Suddenly, Bose told her to look and said that her father was there to find her. The elf girl became alarmed, saying that it was bad because outsiders weren't allowed to ride the holy beast, and if her father saw them, they would both be punished. Even though Bose was from the Sword Saint Guild, he could still face consequences. Seeing how scared she was, Bose laughed and admitted that he had lied. The elf girl was shocked and asked how he could lie to her. Bose urged her to open her eyes and enjoy the beautiful view around them. When she saw the view, she was amazed and said no one had ever brought her up there before. Bose then suggested they play more exciting games. The elf girl asked what kind of game he meant, but Bose didn't respond. He sped up the holy beast, taking them around the world tree. Eventually, Bose stopped and stood on top of the beast, lifting the elf girl into a titanic pose. Both of them felt happy, and as they kissed, they began to develop feelings for each other. Later, while taking a break, Bose told the elf girl, Nikita, that the high-level officials were in closed-door talks and wouldn't appear for 3 to 5 days, so she shouldn't worry. Nikita told Bose that she invited him because he seemed to radiate pure happiness, free from anxiety. She wished she could live as freely as he did and see the outside world. Bose asked her what was stopping her and said he could show her. Even though he was new to the Sword Saint Guild, he had already become well known as Iron Gun Bose and had been on many adventures. Nikita became excited and asked if he could really take her out. Bose replied that he could, though he was a bit nervous. He asked her why, if her life in the tribe was so much better than his, she wanted to leave. Nikita explained that the things people considered good in her life were actually traps. The election for the patriarch was coming up, and several of her uncles were planning to take her father's place. To secure his support, her father intended to give her to one of the uncles. Bose tried to comfort her, saying that while he didn't understand all the elf politics, he knew it was painful to feel trapped and lose your freedom. He promised to get a teleportation scroll from the guild and take her with him. However, they would offend both the elf tribe and the Sword Saint Guild, and they could only live a quiet life in hiding from then on. He asked if she was willing to do that. Nikita happily agreed, saying she would be willing to live an ordinary life because that was the life she wanted. Afterward, they kissed again. Back in the present, Elif and Mr. Bose were following Blanchette, the general of the tribe, when she suddenly disappeared into thin air. Surprised, Elif asked Bose how she had vanished. Bose suggested that it might have been a hidden barrier and advised her to keep following Blanchette. However, he was also surprised because he hadn't known about the barrier before. As they entered, they were shocked to see a completely different environment on the other side of the barrier. Blanchette stopped the holy beast in front of the elders of the elf tribe and thanked it for its hard work, asking it to go and wait for her. She then knelt in front of the elders and said the mission was complete. Upon seeing them, Elif asked Bose who those people were. Bose told her they were the leaders of the elf tribe and warned her to be careful about what she said in front of them. Suddenly, Elif began feeling nauseous and she wondered why. One of the elders asked Blanchette to step aside. She introduced the elders, Verton, one of the leaders, Elrond, also a leader, and lastly, Avery, who was very happy to see Bose after such a long time. Bose was also happy to see Elder Avari again and greeted all the leaders of the elf tribe. However, Elrond did not look pleased to see Bose. Avari, noticing the awkward atmosphere, changed the subject and shared how as the last time she saw him, he was still a young man. Verton then asked Bose if the Sword Saint Guild had sent him to recruit them. Bose explained that his guild, along with the Sword Saint Guild, had reached an agreement to build the Heroes' Alliance to defeat the Dark Guild. This time he had specifically invited the elf tribe to join them. Avari smiled and said that although the guild Bose had established became famous suddenly, they were also aware of the decline of the Sword Saint Guild. Verton told Bose that Sword Saint had been out of sight for at least 3 months, and without such important combat power, he questioned if there was any point in forming the alliance. Bose explained that was why he came to the elf tribe, to request a few people to activate plant magic and have the trees and insects help find traces of Sword Saint. He added that Lord Sword Saint was only 1 step away from breaking through to the Demon King level and that there was no way she would fall. He said that since Avari and Sword Saint were old friends, she should know her strength very well. However, Avari explained that to activate all the plants outside the elf tribe and cast such a huge spell would require a high price. She asked Bose what they could get in return for their help. Elif spoke up, saying this wasn't the time to worry about personal gains and losses. If they didn't find Sword Saint soon, the Dark Guild's power would reach their area sooner or later. Verton didn't like this response and called her a wild girl, adding that everything should be based on reciprocity. She told Bose that in order to be on the same side, they would need to prove their worth first. She used his magic to grow another plant monster and said to Bose that the 5 elements P was just the threshold for the power of the Demon Lord. If Elif could withstand this attack, they could talk about an alliance. As the plant monster prepared to attack, Elif asked Bose what to do. Bose reassured her, saying that she didn't need to worry, he would handle it. Meanwhile, the plant monster aimed its light cannon at Elif and Bose. The attack was so powerful that it caused a huge explosion. Bose used his card skills to summon a holy guardian for himself and Elif. He addressed the elders, saying they had temporarily lost an important fighter, Sword Saint. However, he hoped they would understand the situation. Even if they didn't join them, he was confident that they could defeat the Dark Guild. Bose had already defeated the plant monster in front of the elders. Avari smiled and said it was just a test. But Bose had withstood the light cannon, which was as strong as a 3-star Demon Lord, without flinching. Avari praised him for becoming powerful. Verton was surprised and commented that the card could summon divine magic. However, Elif was not happy with how they had been treated and questioned whether the test was meant to kill them. She warned the elders that they would regret it when the Dark Guild invaded. Hearing this, Bose asked Lee not to be rude. Elrond then commented how it has been 16 years and Bose agreed. Elif, still angry, suggested they quickly find their mother and leave. She felt they were just making things difficult. Bose explained that he was being polite because Elrond was Elif's grandfather. Elrond added that Nikita's daughter was also 16 years old. Elif was shocked to learn that Elrond was her grandfather. The elders then started celebrating. Bose and Elif were confused, wondering what had just happened. Avari laughed and told the other elders that he had told them not to joke with Bose and Elif, as they were so scared. Verton commented that Lai's angry expression was cute and that she looked a bit like Nikita when she was younger. Seeing this, Bose asked Elrond if it meant he was accepting him, and Ilf also wanted to know what was going on. Elder Elrond approached Bose, grabbed his hand, and told him to stop calling him Patriarch, just like Nikita had. He asked Bose to call him father and called him his good son-in-law. Bose was surprised and reminded Elder Elrond that he had once said he would never accept it. Elrond replied to forget about that and asked where Nikita was. With a big smile, Elder Elrond asked Bose and Elif to come with him. They were still confused, and Elif asked Bose what was happening. Bose replied that he wasn't sure, but maybe over the years, Nikita had improved her relationship with her grandfather. However, seeing Elder Elrond's face, there might be something wrong, and Blanchette, who was watching from the sidelines, might be involved. As they approached the sacred tree, Elder Elrond explained that the huge tree they had seen outside was just a magic projection. The real sacred tree of the elves stood before them. He went on to tell them the tree's history. 500 years ago, during troubled times, the first matriarch, Lord Tavala, used herself as a nutrient to activate powerful plant magic, bringing the sacred tree to life. This tree helped establish the elf tribe. The light from the tree gave the tribe enlightenment, granting them plant magic and archery skills, making them stronger. The tribe had relied on the sacred tree for protection over the years, but the tree had started to wither. As the world became calmer, some elves had left and formed relationships with outside tribes, which went against Lord Tavalla's wishes. That's why they strictly forbade high-blooded elves from marrying outside the tribe to preserve their gifts. But the sacred tree continued to lose nutrients, and if this continued, the elf tribe would weaken with it. Elder Elrond had been against Bose being with Nikita because of this, and now he was going to show Bose something that he had never even shown to Lord Sword Saint. Bose asked what this meant, and Elder Elrond used a dispelling magic. Elif started to feel nauseous again. Suddenly, the sacred tree they had seen earlier was revealed to be an illusion. The real tree stood before them. Elrond claimed it was the true form of the world tree. While Elif still felt nauseous, Bose was shocked to see Nikita. Elrond explained Nikita had become the nourishment for the tree, sacrificing herself for the tribe. Seeing her face, Bose angrily shouted her name and reached out to her. Bose was so angry that he grabbed Elder Elrond by the neck and shouted. He called him a bastard and said that for more than 10 years, Elder Elrond had been chasing them. He accused him of forcing Nikita to come back just to make her a sacrifice. He demanded Nikita be returned to him. However, Elder Elrond stayed calm and told Vertin and Avery to get ready. They both understood and knew what to do. Vertin and Avery walked to the sacred tree and began holding it. As they touched the tree, their bodies started merging with it. The tree absorbed them, and a small part of it turned green, making them part of the sacred tree. When Elif saw this, she was terrified and shook with fear. Elder Elrond then asked Bose if he understood. He explained that becoming part of the sacred tree and dedicating one's life to the tribe was an honor for the elves. He said Nikita must have thought the same. Bose, furious, punched the ground and said it was unfair. Seeing her father upset, Elif tried to comfort him. Elder Elrond went on to explain that a young leaf could extend the life of the sacred tree for another year. He admitted that it might be hard for a foreigner to understand elves, but added that the arrival of Bose and his group had changed his mind. He told Bose that Nikita might be able to come back to life. Bose, surprised, asked if it was true and if Nikita could be brought back. Elder Elrond said yes, but only if they were willing. He pointed to Elif and said that if she paid a small price, Nikita could be saved. Bose immediately told Elder Elrond not to target Elif. He warned him not to do anything to her. Elder Elrond clarified that he wasn't interested in Elif, but in the treasure cards she had. Elif explained that the card was a gift from the legendary hero La Ping. Elder Elrond explained that he felt powerful magic coming from the cards. If they offered them to the sacred tree, it might be able to bring the tree back to full strength. He said everything in Elven culture came from the sacred tree, and if it absorbed enough magic power at once, it could replace the lives that had been sacrificed. He promised that Nikita's resurrection would be prioritized. Bose asked if Elder Elrond was telling the truth and suggested letting the sacred tree absorb the magic from the cards. However, Elif tried to explain that it wasn't possible for someone who had died to come back. She also reminded him that the cards were meant to help save the world. Just then, something unexpected happened. A remote-like object appeared, and someone began controlling Elder Elrond's emotions with it. When the dial was turned to sad, Elder Elrond suddenly became sorrowful. He told Bose in a sad tone that he understood his concerns, but he wasn't entirely sure it would work. He said if it succeeded, not only could Nikita be revived, but the elves could regain their glory. He would have no more worries and could fully devote himself to the fight against the Dark Guild. Bose agreed, realizing that it was about defeating the Dark Guild and saving the hero's continent. However, Elif disagreed. She warned Bose that if something went wrong with the cards, they would be blamed. But Bose didn't listen. He took the card from her and said not to worry. He promised that he would take full responsibility for whatever would happen.